Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PTC podcast. I'm here today again with Caroline Leon. How are you doing, Caroline? Welcome back.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. We'll go straight into it. You're sitting here today as a official Guinness World Record holder.
I am.
How does that feel? All your hard work paid off?
Yeah, honestly, it feels the same as before. As before I got the certificate.
Yeah, it's been a while since you started this, so it's good. We'll get a little photograph of the certificate up on the screen. But so what was the record for? Why did you do it? How did it go? Simple questions.
Yeah, so the record was for a speed ascent of the Volcanic Seven Summits. And it basically means that you're climbing the highest volcano on each of the 7 continents in the fastest possible time.
So what are those mountains?
So it's Kilimanjaro in Africa, Mount Elbrus in Europe, Pico de Orizaba in Mexico, Ojos de Salado in Chile in South America, Mount Gilloway in Papua New Guinea, Mount Sidley in Antarctica, and Mount Damavand in Asia.
And so it's Damavand in Asia, not Everest or anything in Nepal because they're not volcanoes?
Yeah, they're not volcanoes.
Cool. So what was the time?
So there had been no official record before that. So literally Guinness gave me a timeline of 200 days. And initially, I actually tried this 3 times. And the first time, let me backtrack. So Guinness had given me a time frame of 6 months. So it had to be done in less than 200 days, which is basically being quite generous and giving you 3 weeks for each mountain, roughly, or a month, 3 weeks. But I had actually tried this over the course of 3 years to complete. And because of the pandemic, because of COVID, because of so many other restrictions in countries closing their borders and opening their borders and closing them again, and vaccination restrictions and PCR restrictions, and just then the war in Russia, it ended up taking me the better part of 3 huge attempts and the course of 3 years to kind of complete. But the record that I did was 180 something days.
So basically it took you 3 years because you had to start again.
I had to start again literally I have 3 consecutive years where I attempted it, but I think I tried it 5 separate times over the course of those 3 years. Because what was interesting is that because it's a speed record, you have to do them all consecutively, and Guinness gives you these restrictions where you're not allowed to stop in the middle, so you literally have to go one after the other. So if you're not able to bag a summit, then you have to go back and do it again and again and again and again until you can fit it into this kind of really consolidated time frame.
But it's also, you have to go when the mountain's safest or at least less dangerous.
Yeah.
So you can't just keep going back. You've got to wait till certain times a year.
Yeah, of course. Some mountains, and particularly Antarctica, you can only go in the summer season. And that makes it restrictive because it means that you can only go in December, January to go and climb this mountain. So basically every other mountain is centered around the mountains that have very little wiggle room. Ojos de Salado as well, it's best to attempt to climb it in the summer season.
In the southern hemisphere's summer?
So it will be December, January, February.
Okay, so because I remember the first time you were talking about doing this, we'd just come out of COVID, and
I think we were still in COVID in 2021. Yeah.
So it was either the very end of 2020. It was actually the very end of 2020. You and I and Go for Good were on the beach, and you were talking about this first trip, the first attempt. And we said, well, why don't we take a little corporate fundraising trip and help you with the Kilimanjaro leg? So that was our first endeavor post-COVID to the summit of Kilimanjaro with Go for Good.
Yeah, of course. And that was I've got some notes here. That was in October of 2021. But actually, I'd gone to Elbrus already that year. Well, not gone to Elbrus because obviously there was the pandemic and then there was the war. And so we tried to go to Elbrus in July of 2021 and the borders weren't open. It was still closed. So I remember we went to Mount Kazbek instead. So that was kind of in the midsummer to like end of 2021. That was my first attempt at trying it. And then obviously in October we went to Kilimanjaro with a whole group of golf for gooders.
Yeah, you summited that time, came back down, but then there was basically the rest of the attempt wasn't worth doing at that stage.
I'm pretty sure I went to Iran and did Damavand around that time as well, the first time, because in total I've climbed Damavand 4 times as well. So it's pretty in line with how many times I attempted this record.
What's Iran like as a place to go as a female?
Look, it's really, I've never had any problems with it, but I'm always very safe and very cautious, and I follow all of the recommended guidelines, and to me, Iran is a very beautiful place. Historically, it's very beautiful. The architecture is insane. The people are very lovely and very hospitable, very generous. It's really a very lovely place to visit. It's kind of like going back in time and seeing what a country would have been like without Western influence, because you really get a taste for that. You get a taste of the actual food and the actual culture and what people actually wear, rather than this amalgamation of Western influence. So there's no McDonald's, there's no like Starbucks, there's no anything. So it's very untainted. It's very beautiful. Even the architecture, it's very Persian. So it's a lot of mosaic art and these beautiful infrastructures, beautiful mosques. It's a really lovely place to visit. And to be honest with you, like every time I've been there, I've been really safe. So
that's good. And that was your second one because you'd done it previously with the GCC attempt.
Yeah. So I had, when I did all of the mountains in the Middle East, I had gone to Iran the first time.
Like 2018 or 19 or something?
It was 2019, September of 2019. So I felt the first time I went to Iran, I was very nervous and overly cautious with my attire and how I behaved and what I did there. And then in 2021, just as we were planning Elbrus and Kilimanjaro, I had gone to Iran again at that time. And it was easy, managed to summit again, Damavand, no problems.
So then moving into the spring.
So that was, just to interrupt you, that was my first real go at it. And it was a complete...
well, still COVID, wasn't it? So there's loads of international borders closed.
Completely. So Russia was closed. The war in Russia had just begun. Chile, Antarctica, all of these countries were closed. There was very heavy vaccine restrictions. At the time, I think there wasn't even a full rollout of the vaccine. So it was just PCR testing. So even if you traveled to some countries, you had to get a ton of PCR tests, and it was just very challenging. So it was kind of the first attempt of this, but it really gave me a very clear idea of like how challenging it would be to kind of get all 7 in a row and be able to summit. So it was a little bit of a baby attempt.
Well, especially if you have to center it around Antarctica. What's Antarctica? Sidley, you said?
Yes.
So, because you can only do that in January, so you either finish at Sidley or you start at Sidley, the way the season goes.
Yeah.
So, then when you finally did the attempt, how did that go? What was it was the following year?
So the next time I tried, was the second kind of full-blown attempt, and this is the time where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I went to Elbrus in Russia, and this was, I've got some notes here, this was around the 16th of September. So around the 16th of September I went to Russia.
Which is out of season.
It's at the end of the season, but what was really interesting is that Russia was in a full-blown war, and at this time, the war with Ukraine had already started. It was very difficult to get a visa. No international travel was really allowed. Insurance was really hard to get. The visa was very difficult. Flights were restricted, and most countries had blocked flights. You couldn't even use your credit card or your cards once you got into Russia. And so it was a kind of a bit of a challenging time to go.
Yeah.
But I don't know why, but I'd been to Russia before, and I didn't really feel like that area was amongst where the conflict was centered.
Where's the mountain?
The mountain is in the Caucasus Mountain Range, so it's on the border of Georgia, so it's a lot to the south. Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I kind of used my instincts and my gut, and I went to Russia anyway. But that turned out to be a bit of a mission. And
you went to Russia by yourself?
Yes, I went to Russia by myself, all alone as a solo
So you've been to Iran by yourself?
Yes.
And now you've gone to Russia by yourself?
Yes.
In the middle of a war?
In the middle of a war, yeah.
To climb a mountain?
To climb a mountain in COVID too. I remember the airport security guy was like, he's looking at me like, what? Like, what are you doing here? And actually that's the reaction that I got from a lot of people. What am I doing here? But look, interestingly, that turned out to be such a, I don't want to swear, but such a head fuck. I ended up getting COVID inside Russia and wasn't feeling so well. I wasn't entirely sure, like, God. Anyway, and my visa was running out. So I literally had a 10-day visa because in Russia you hand over your itinerary and they literally give you your visa based on your itinerary. So if your itinerary is 7 days and the logistics in Russia say, yeah, you can climb this mountain in 7 days and you need 10 days to climb it, you have to leave in 7 days. You can't stay.
Yeah.
So...
What happened on the mountain?
Oh my God, on the mountain again. So firstly, I was quite sick and I was climbing Elbrus. And then on the mountain, so this was September, around mid-September, the mountain was extremely windy. There was really bad weather and a really bad storm. And because I had such a small restriction, like a time window to summit, the entire week that I was there was a blizzard, a complete blizzard. And like I have some photos of going up to, there's a climatization zone. It was about 4.2 and I was in full blown winter gear, like a huge down jacket that you would go to Everest with. And it was 4,000 meters and you couldn't see 1 meter away and it was freezing. Anyway, long story short, I went back to the huts. My guide was like, all right, you're only here for a week. Obviously, it's a huge challenge to get there, so we're going to try. And we tried to go to the summit. We ended up having about 70 kilometer winds, and the wind was so powerful that as we were leaving the saddle, it actually picked me up and picked up my guide. We were roped together, and it lifted both of our body weight up and threw us like 5 meters down the mountain. And I landed on my butt and completely shocked by what had just happened. And I remember Boris, my guide, was like, Caroline, are you okay? Like, have you broken anything? Is everything okay? And I had no idea what happened because I couldn't see anything. It was such a blizzard. And I landed on my butt and I was like, no, I think everything's okay. I don't think anything's broken. And when we tried to stand up, we actually couldn't. Like, we couldn't physically stand up because the wind was so strong. And it was actually just like blowing you straight out from under your feet. And I remember like Boris turned around, put his ice axe into the mountain and we just huddled there. And I remember literally like face to face, like just snuggling into the mountain until the wind died down. And maybe about an hour or so later, the wind died down a little bit and we managed to go right to the saddle and we hid behind this rock. and we stayed there for about an hour, 2 hours, and waiting for the weather to die down. And once it was kind of a clear window, the sun had risen at this stage, so it was sunny and you could see. It was still really heavy wind. We ended up just abandoning it completely. You just said it's too windy. If we can't even walk here and we're in the saddle, there's no way we're going to be able to get across that, like, the ridge. So yeah, we left. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to lose my life over this. So I was like, yeah, fine, sure, no problem. So we turned around and went back down. That was Elbrus, and obviously I had COVID at the time. The wind was really bad, and my visa was running out. So so we abandoned that, and then I managed to get back into Dubai with great difficulty. And once I got back to Dubai, I was like, oh shit. I had literally the next day I was going to Iran, and then a week later I was going to Kilimanjaro.
So that was supposed to be the start, the first trip of the first mountain of the next attempt.
Yes, yeah. And I failed. So I was like, okay, I have to redo this. But I already had commitments to go to Iran, and so at this stage I was like, okay, I'm going to continue and go anyway. So I went to Iran on straight after Elbrus, and managed to get to the summit of Mount Damavand on September the 24th.
So is there still is there still, like, you've lost that attempt at Elbrus?
Yeah.
You go to Damavand a few weeks later. Is there still a time to get
like
back?
5 days later.
So 5 days later you do Damavand. Is there still time to slot Elbrus in, or do you have to wait till next summer?
Well, at this stage, the season for Elbrus was closing.
Yeah.
So Elbrus, you normally climb in June, July, August. So I was climbing it at the end of September. So it was already kind of bad weather. And look, Elbrus is one of those mountains that you can attempt any time of the year. But the weather is horrendous. Like, if you try and climb Elbrus, I know people go skiing there, but if you try and actually climb to the summit, you need perfect conditions to go. Anyway, I did think about that, but at the time, I think when I went to Iran, just to get my visa to Russia and to Iran, you have to give the visa office your passport for 7 to 10 days. So when I was giving and Iran at the time, I know the visa process has improved a lot with the Iranian consulate, but at the time it was 7 to 10 days, maybe. Like, sometimes it would take 2 weeks or even longer to get your visa. So once I'd gotten my visa for Iran this second time, I wasn't in a position to hand over my passport again. I did try. Anyway, so went to Iran, came back, managed to summit Iran, managed to summit Kilimanjaro again in October. I think I did try to go back to Russia. I didn't apply for a visa or anything, but I was watching the weather and speaking to the ground support there, and just kind of keeping a close eye to see what was happening. And I don't think a weather window opened at the time. The war just kind of continued to deteriorate the situation there, and then the COVID situation as well. So it was really multifactorial as to why I didn't go back. So that was the second attempt to do the whole thing. And so I kind of decided that I was going to start the whole thing again. So now we're moving to take 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is the end of the year, is it?
Yes. So this is... Now we fast forward until, what is the date of this? Oh, December of 2022.
Yeah, so you're basically going to do Elbrus, Kili and Damavand first, then do South America, Antarctica, and finish in the spring.
Yeah.
But now you've got to start with Antarctica and finish in the summer. Is that right?
Well, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with Ojos de Salado.
Yeah,
so
okay.
So basically so that was second attempt, like, done and dusted. I had to start again. So this is attempt number 3. I started with Ojos de Salado in Chile. So in December, about late December, I flew down to Chile and went to climb Ojos de Salado. And interestingly, we attempted the summit on the 31st of December of 2022, and on the 1st of January of 2023, I got to the summit of Ojos. So that was like, tick, one done. And what's really interesting is that because for Ojos, I was acclimatizing on a whole load of other mountains, I didn't actually step foot onto Ojos until that summit attempt. So I started on the 1st of January 2023. So that was attempt number 3. And then after obviously getting to the summit of Ojos de Salado, I then went down to Antarctica in January of 2023, and then on the 17th of January managed to summit Sidley, and then came down. I went to the States, and with Destiny, we went to Pico de Orizaba, and I think I've got the date here. On the 16th of February, we summited Pico de Orizaba.
And that's in Mexico.
That's in Mexico, yeah. So now I had done 3 back-to-back. So that was, yeah.
Good. So what's Antarctica like?
Antarctica is, like, to be honest with you, when I look back at that expedition, it's actually my favorite expedition of all time. I've never climbed a mountain that was so beautiful, cold, challenging, but also so rewarding. And I'd also never really been in a climbing team with people that were so proficient. And it really made me get better as a kind of like amateur alpinist.
Yeah. So how many days are you down in Antarctica? Like, what does that look like, that whole expedition?
So basically you fly in from Punta Arenas in Chile, and you fly on like an Icelandic aircraft. I know it used to be a Ulysses, but now they use a proper airline. And you fly down to Union Glacier. You land on the blue ice, and then you get picked up by some like vehicles that are driving through this like terrain that looks out of another world. And you drive to camp, which is Union Glacier, and it's kind of like this, 100, 200 people like built up camp. And our team waited there for about a good 5 or 6 days before we had enough of a good weather to then take another 3-hour flight to Sidley and then go climb this, beautiful, majestic volcano. And I call her like a little mama volcano because there's all these little baby volcanoes around her. She's beautiful.
How high is that one?
Oh, God, I can't remember the height entirely, but it's about 4,800, something like that.
But it's literally colder than all of the other ones.
Oh, my God, it was freezing. Like when we left for the summit, I really underestimated the cold at first, but I had some like huge gloves, and I just put them on my backpack as we were leaving camp. And I remember like I put them on my backpack and then I put them onto my hands, and my gloves were frozen solid. They were so cold that when I put my hands into them, they actually froze my hands. And I remember for the first 10 minutes, like my whole arm was going dead. And I stopped and I was like telling my guide, Eli, at the time, I was like, oh my God, Eli, I can't walk. My hands are so cold. And he's Alaskan. He's like, start moving your arm. So I was swinging my arm and I could feel all the blood rushing to the tips of my fingers. And I actually started crying because it hurt so much. So I was like, whoa. And then that's the first time one of my other climbing partners at the time, Rob, he was so lovely. He's like, put your gloves in your down jacket. And I was like, oh, okay. So like never put them on the floor, never put them outside because everything freezes. Yeah, and then I put some hand warmers in and I changed into mittens. I took the gloves off. I put my trekking poles away. I put my hands in my pockets, and I walked like that for a good time until my hands warmed up. And then I had a lot of different other problems on that summit, like basically you're breathing out like warm air, and the warm air is just instantly freezing to your goggles. And so for about a good 2 hours, I couldn't see anything, and I was just following this bright pink fluorescent rope on the floor. Like, I couldn't actually see the steps that I was walking, and I had no idea what the terrain looked like. And we were stopping every hour for 5 minutes, and I was taking off and like literally chipping out the ice from my goggles every hour. And then within 2 seconds, frozen solid, couldn't see anything again. And I was just following this pink rope. And I was like, it was quite dangerous now that I look back on it. I'm like, oh God, terrible idea.
What could you have done differently?
Look, I'd never climbed anything so cold, so I wasn't prepared for that. But I think for me, I would have probably walked with glasses, or like one of those masks that you can put on your face that keeps the hot air in, so you're not constantly projecting it out into the air. So just, a few different things, but yeah.
And are you carrying all your stuff on this mountain, or is there guides, or what is it?
Well, you have a guide, but you're carrying everything, absolutely everything. Yeah, so
every day?
Yeah, every day you're carrying everything. Yeah.
So what kind of weight is that?
Oh God, it's a good 25, 30 kilos.
On your back?
So you're carrying about 10 kilos on your back, and about 20, maybe a little bit, 20 kilos is a fair estimate in a sled.
So you're dragging a sled across?
Yeah, so we're also you're carrying all your gear, and you're carrying your gear for 10 days on a freezing ass mountain. Then you're carrying 10 days worth of food. You're carrying all of your waste. So every single time you go to the bathroom, you're carrying that. It's freezing solid in a bag, but you're still putting it into your sled and carrying that. Then you're carrying, like I mentioned, the tent, and you're carrying fuel, and you're carrying like cooking utensils and stuff like that. So like the stove and little things like that. So it's a lot of weight, and some safety equipment on top of like a -40 sleeping bag and boots and clothes and layers and a toothbrush, and yeah, it's a lot of weight.
Okay, so coming off Antarctica, you've survived that. What's the next one?
So after, I didn't write notes after this, after Antarctica, I think I came back and...
So you've done 2 official now, back to back?
No, I've done 3.
Okay.
So I've done Ojos de Salado, Mount Sidley, and Pico de Orizaba in Mexico. So once I've finished Mexico, I came back to Dubai, and then I was planning to go to Mount Gilloway. And that's also a mountain that I attempted twice. Well, not attempted. I went there the first time, but previously I'd also tried to go to Mount Gilloway, and I had a lot of COVID restrictions and that were keeping the country closed. And I think, so I had bought an airline ticket, I'd gone to Singapore, I'd waited, wasn't able to go, came back, like failed attempt. A couple months or a little bit later in that journey, like my timeline is all skewed here, I went back, and this time the border had opened to Mount Gilloway. And so I managed from Singapore, playing a waiting game, managed to get into the country, and then, went to climb Gilloway. So that's kind of another, I had a moment.
What's the mountain in Mount Gilloway?
In Papa New Guinea.
It's called Mount Gilloway in Papua New Guinea.
Yes.
Right,
so Mount Gilloway is the highest volcano in Oceania, and it is located in Papua New Guinea, in the western part of Papua New Guinea, the part that there's cannibals and like super dangerous. So obviously you can see.
Who did you go there with?
I went alone.
You went to the cannibal place alone?
Yes, I went to the cannibal place alone. I'm going to tell you the funniest story. So I was on the airline, like the flight from Singapore from Papua New Guinea out, flying to Singapore.
On your way home?
On my way home, after I'd climbed the mountain. And I was sitting next to an oil executive whose name I won't tell you, who ran a very big oil company down there. And he asked me what I was doing there, and I was telling him that I went to climb a mountain alone. And he looked at me and he's like, I don't go onto this island without armed security. And he's like, we don't move anywhere in this area without security. And I was asking him why. And he told me a few stories about some of the personnel that were working on site that had actually been killed by rebels fighting in the area. So even when I was in Gilloway, my guide said to me, he's like, you're the first woman to come here alone. And this is how dumb I am. I was like, oh, really? Like freaking out.
Yeah. Okay.
And I had a couple of moments on that mountain that were pretty precarious, very scary.
Like what?
Just, so I found myself in the middle of the wild in pure, dense Papua New Guinea forest with 5 men with these, are they called machetes?
The big knives?
The big knives, yeah. Cutting through rainforest alone, completely, as a woman, completely alone. And we weren't able to speak the same language. And we had different cultural backgrounds. And it was one of those moments where I was walking through this forest and I was trailing behind them. And I remember thinking to myself that if this goes wrong, it really goes wrong. Like, I'm praying the entire way that everything's going to be okay. And at one point, so I pitched a tent maybe about 10, 15 meters away. And the guys were staying in this traditional hut that was on the mountain. And I went inside the hut, and it was all 5 of them were sitting on the floor, and they were cooking with like actual fire, like not a stove and a lighter. They were actually making fire and cooking on a stove that they had traditionally made, and they were eating traditional food and sitting around like with their machetes just sitting on the side of them and all just talking. And it was raining really heavily because that's what happens in Papua New Guinea. It rains a lot. And they had invited me in. So we're talking in like hand gestures. And actually one of the guides, Raphael, he spoke a little bit of English, but he's like, I'm coming in and I'm sitting down. Actually, Raphael and one of the other guys spoke a little bit of English, but I come inside and I sit down with them and they're cooking and talking. And I have some footage of this. I'm filming this. And again, there's this voice in the back of my mind that's like, oh my God, this could go so wrong. Like in 2 seconds, I could be cannibalized, eaten, and I could disappear without a trace. No one would know because aside from like a handful of really close friends, nobody knew where I was or what I was doing or the fact that I was in the middle of nowhere, like no GPS location. I didn't have an inReach. I just went blind. So I'm a little bit silly like that.
So you've gone to a war zone twice, you've gone to Iran twice, and you've gone to Papua New Guinea where there's cannibals for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Very cool. So you get to the top of the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that mountain like?
So it's the base of the mountain is really...
Because I'm pretty sure no one's going there after what you just said.
No.
This record is intact for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, probably. So it's really, really dense, dense rainforest at the bottom, and dense in a way that I hadn't seen in a very long time. Like no paved path, no trail, no nothing. Lots of really exotic bugs. Like I remember looking at my hand at one point and I was just swarmed with these tiny minute flies and creatures and stuff. And then as you move out of the dense rainforest, it turns a little bit swampy, and maybe it's the time of year that I was there, it was very swampy. And so like up to my knee, I was sinking in mud. And that's quite challenging to walk in for several hours, but sinking in deep, deep mud. And then as we get a little bit higher, it clears out and kind of into like a moorland. So it's like grassy fields, a little bit of shrubbery. And the volcano, as you move up it, it's mostly short grasses and long grasses. And there's a little bit of a kind of a rock climbing area. There's three kind of sections that require a little bit of skill, and then it's just kind of a scramble to the top.
And how are your feet and your back and all that? Because for anybody very quickly who doesn't know, you've broken all your bones in your feet and your pelvis and your back, which we've talked about in the past. But on any of these mountains, are you struggling with that?
Look, on and off, it's kind of a private struggle that I have with this all the time. And I don't really talk about it a lot because I get on with it, but it occupies a part of my life constantly. And just in really minute ways, but it's there in the back of my mind. Like, I was talking to you the other day because I had this footage of me running and walking. And when I started to watch my gait, I could see these really minute limps or these minute ways in which I walk funny. And it doesn't happen when I'm like wearing sneakers and walking to the gym. You can start to see it when I'm like on a mountain and I'm 10 hours in and like my hips are not working properly and my back is spasming and my feet are like swollen. And so yeah, it's there.
And are you in pain when this is happening?
Look, sometimes yes and sometimes no. Mostly my feet are sore after a full day of walking or hiking or climbing. That is certainly always happening. And there is a degree of stuff that starts to go wrong, like in my body. Like as soon as my feet get inflamed and swollen, it's almost, and the only way that I can describe it, it's like the muscles in my feet stop working. And because they stop working, it trails up to my right knee doesn't know how to be a knee anymore. And then my right hip doesn't know how to be a hip. And so really small like movements my body can't do properly. It's really strange. And then it takes it takes like from like 10% of concentration. Sorry, one sec. Sorry.
Sorry.
Like this 10% of my mind, it starts to take up 80% of my mind because now I'm really concentrating on how I'm walking. And I start to get a little bit self-conscious about it. So I'm like, I know that I'm walking like a retard and I just don't know how to stop it. And I use all of my will to try and control it a little bit more. And yeah, sometimes people can notice, sometimes they don't, but it really fucking bothers me when people can.
Well, people notice it.
Yeah.
But
like I wish it didn't, but it really does. Like when people say to me, "Oh, are you okay? Like, do you need help? Or what's going on? Did you injure something?" Like it really infuriates me because for me, it's like, fuck, I'm still injured. Like this thing that happened to me such a long time ago is still there and I can't get rid of it. And it's kind of been the fueling force of what I'm doing, like getting rid of that, making it, abolishing any trace of it, even though I'm covered in scars.
But I mean, that's similar to, that's your interpretation of what people think versus what's actually happening. Like, how much of your day do people not mention it to you?
Oh, people don't mention it during the day because you can't see it in these situations. Like, I'm sitting here, you can't tell. I'm wearing jeans.
You've literally just talked about getting to the top of mountains in freezing cold weather, whatever, icy conditions, dragging a sled. Like, of course people can't tell, you know. But when they do tell, obviously it bothers you, which is fine. Like, that's, yeah. I get it. But I'm more interested in like what kind of pain or discomfort does, because when you say my feet are sore, like everybody gets home from a mountain, oh, my feet are sore, but like your feet must be a different kind of sore.
Yeah, it's
not like a tired sore or blister sore, it's like a deeper sore. Or is it?
It's how do I describe this? It's like my bones in my feet are aching. And they ache, and then the muscles and the skin swell, and then they get swollen. And as soon as that my feet swell, and I can see when it happens, they stop working. And so what I've been trying to do more recently is condition them to hurt more, so that when I'm on the mountain, they're used to it, and so it's not such a big difference. But in certain situations, it's a problem. It's definitely a problem, especially like when you have to go again and again.
Okay, so let's get back on track then. You've done Gilloway. Is that 4 done?
Mm-hmm. That's 4 done.
Right,
yeah.
3 to go.
Yeah, 3 to go. And it's the same 3 that I've already done.
So you're going back. So where do you go next? Back to Kili?
So I think what I did next is I went to Iran again. So I went back to Damavand. And look, most of the time I had gone climbing alone. So it's for the first time actually ever.
Bring that microphone just around a little bit. Yeah.
I decided that I wanted to climb with some friends. I wanted this to be a fun experience. So I invited 2 of my friends to come with me to climb Damavand. And we were going to go for 5 days. We were going to Iran. We were driving straight to the mountain, climbing, coming back down, and then leaving. And it was all going really well until we got to the 4,200 meter mark. And both of them started to deteriorate in terms of health. They got sick and they weren't feeling well, and they were having like just feeling fluish and feeling like nauseous, and look, some very mild altitude
it happens though,
sickness.
Hey?
It really does. And I had so much sympathy for them.
Yeah.
But
just awkward
like,
for you.
Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, damn it, not again. So.
And you can't leave them and go on just to get the summit.
No. So basically, what ended up happening is I had a friend, Richard, and Ahmed that came with me, and we obviously had a guide, Hamid, and we went to the mountain, climbed up to 4.2, and my friend Richard was like, I'm not going to come with you guys to the summit. I'm not really feeling my strongest. And we were like, great, perfect, no problem. Stay at the shelter. So in the shelter, it's quite a little haven. It's a really nice shelter. There's food. There's a lot of people there. It's nice. So he was really happy to stay and just wait for us to do our summit push. He wasn't sick enough that he needed to go down. He was just feeling a little bit nauseous, and he didn't feel very well. So we all felt like we were in a safe position to try to go to the summit. And then the morning that we were leaving for the summit, we wake up at 3 a.m. and there is lenticular clouds, a huge storm. Like the weather is atrocious. So we're speaking to our guide, and basically we decide that we're going to wait a couple more hours and see if we can try a little bit later in the day. Anyway, a couple of hours later, I think it would have been about 7 or 8 in the morning, we wake up and the storm has subsided. The lenticular cloud is still there. It's like this giant hat that sits on top of the mountain, and it just like circles. And this is now, I think it's in April and May, and April and May is the spring, and it's kind of the worst, aside from the winter, the worst season for climbing Damavand, because it's where the most accidents happen, the most number of deaths have happened during this time. So it's not really the safest. And it's also, the entire mountain is covered in snow now. So there's still really heavy, heavy snow. So we decide we're going to try and go to the summit. So myself and Ahmed, my friend, we leave, we start going to the summit. We get maybe about 5,000 meters, I think. I'm sure if you look at the YouTube video on this, it will tell you the exact height. I can't remember right now. So we get to about 5,000 meters and he is unable to walk. And I don't mean altitude sickness, like vomiting or sick. He's just exhausted and he physically doesn't have any power to keep going.
How tall is the mountain?
It's 5'6".
Right. So
five,
got
six,
quite a bit to go.
Yeah, we've got about 600 meters, about 3 hours, maybe 4 hours to go. And so we sit down, we have a break. 5 minutes later, we get up and he takes 2 more steps and he's like, guys, like, I feel fine, but I'm just exhausted. And he's like, why don't you go on without me? And both of us, myself and the guide, were like, no, like, absolutely not. We can't do that. This is when horror stories start to happen when you leave people. So we made a decision to go down the mountain. So we literally glissaded down the mountain and put our ice axes in, took our crampons off and slid down our bums all the way back to the hut. It was great. It's actually the funnest descent I've ever had, because Damavand has no crevasses, no glaciers. It's literally a volcano and it's just rock underneath. So it's really safe to glissade down. But
on the snow.
Yeah, on the snow. Yeah. So we just, we followed our guide and he was like, all right, we're just going to slide down on our bum here. And we made it down that mountain in like 25 minutes. It was so quick.
That's one of those things that when you're on your way up the mountain, all you can think is every step up, when I'm this tired, I have to go back down. So I wonder, like, if he'd known that he was going to get a slide all the way down, would he have been able to go a few meters further? But
yeah, but honestly, he couldn't. So that was another failed attempt. And this time it wasn't because I couldn't physically go or any other reason. It's just I wasn't going to leave a friend behind. And also then we had visa issues as well. So we had this restriction that particularly in Iran, it's not one of those places that you want to
delay.
Be lax on your visa.
Yeah.
So, I'm just going to stay in the country to climb a mountain.
We'll sort it out at the airport when we get back.
No, absolutely not. So we had, I think it was 2 days left on our visa. So all 3 of us were like, all right, we're going down the mountain, which meant that I had to go back again. So I think after that, went to Kili again, then went to Elbrus, managed to summit Kili again, managed to summit Elbrus.
That was the trip that we were on,
with all of you
Elbrus,
guys. Yeah. Great, perfect weather, clear skies, no COVID, still a war, but and it was really lovely. And then obviously came down, and then I went to Iran again for the very last time.
Like immediately.
Yeah, I slept for about 6 hours, got on a flight, processed my visa again somewhere in the interim, and in between space between all of those mountains. And then 5 hours later was on an aeroplane after coming off Elbrus, down 5 hours later in Iran, and at 4,200 meters. Like, at this stage, I remember taking a pillow with me, and I was asleep on the plane, asleep on the car journey to the mountain, walked up to 4,200 meters, slept for 4 hours, bagged the summit, came back down, and then went all the way down the mountain. And then literally the next morning, that evening, drove back to Tehran, which is another 3 hours, and then back on a flight to Dubai. So managed to do that with Sophie, and we did it in 24 hours. It was honestly insane.
So if anybody's watching your international travel escapades, you're going Russia, Iran, Iran, Russia, Iran, Papua New Guinea, Russia, Iran. All right,
basically.
Well, just to climb mountains, everybody.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. Very good. Nothing to see here.
No, absolutely nothing. To just a stupid girl going on an expedition.
Going to meet cannibals and war zones and sanctioned
countries,
empires.
Look, when I talk
sanctioned
about
regimes.
Yes, sanctioned regimes. When I talk about it like this, it really, like, the magnitude of what I put myself through over those 3 years is enormous. And Originally, I had planned to try and attempt this in 60 days, and the 60 days turned into 90 days, and the 90 days turned into 120 days and into 180. And I just managed it by this hair on my chin. Yeah.
So, how many times have you done Kili in total?
Oh, I've lost count, but I think it's about 5.
And 3 and a bit for Damavand.
No, it would be 4, and then so the first time with
the GCC effort.
Yes, and then 3 more times. Yeah. So 4 times, but 3 of them I summited, and then 1 no.
You've been to Elbrus twice.
Yeah.
Tried to go to Papua New Guinea
twice
once, and then got there the second time.
Yeah.
And at least you got Sidley, the far away ones done first time.
Oh, totally. Yeah, they were really good. Even though for Ojos we had really high winds and got banged around at the top a little bit.
Is that the one that Destiny was on?
No. Destiny went to Pico.
Mm-hmm. Pico. That was eventful or no events to speak of?
Pico was great. We ate Mexican food and drank this like amazing cinnamon coffee and just like I remember looking at Destiny, looking at some of the destinations we were staying at. I was like, this is like luxury compared to what I had been through. Yeah, it's nice not to sleep in a tent and not to smell.
Good. Well, you got the Guinness World Record. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
What's next?
A lot of stuff. My brain does not stop thinking about. I think I dream a lot about what's next, and I have a few things that I'm working on. Like I really want to climb the 7 highest volcanoes in the world all at one time. So I've been talking to people about doing that. And
well, what's that? Where are they?
They're actually all in Chile and Argentina. And it's actually something that I thought about as soon as I finished the Volcanic Seven Summits. When I went down to Chile's one of those, like, it's called the Avenue of the Volcanoes, and it's just so beautiful. And you literally have the Atacama Desert that is at like 4,200 meters. That's kind of sea level there. So you feel like you're at sea level, but actually you're sitting at 4.2. And you're driving around, and then there's like, dung, volcano. And then, 2 or 3 kilometers away is dung, another volcano. And then dung, another volcano. But you're actually driving around at 4,200 meters. It feels like you're driving through the Atacama Desert, and it's like volcano, 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 volcano. And they're just all clustered around there. And when I was there, I really wanted to go and actually climb the 7 highest that are there. And they're in the area, and there's a couple, 5 of them are in the same area. I think it's, I can't remember how to pronounce one of them, but it's Ojos de Salado, it's Incahuasi, it's Pisca, and a couple of others, and then there's a few further north. So that's something that I thought about doing for a while, and then obviously some other... I thought about doing the 7 summits, which I'm kind of trying to work my way through, except running into... They're very expensive.
Yeah. Because you tried to do Aconcagua last year.
Yeah, so I'm going back.
Yeah. Going back this year.
Yeah.
That's the next one?
Yeah, that's the next one.
Very good. Very good. Okay, well, I think we can... Anything else you want to add on? Any pieces of advice you want to give people who want to hike to the top of the world's coldest, windiest mountains in some of the world's most dangerous countries to walk around by yourself as a female in?
Look, interestingly, I get asked this not frequently, quite infrequently, but it happens enough that it's drawn my attention to it. I get asked by people who are interested in climbing the 7 volcanic summits about some of the mountains. And interestingly, it's quite a lot of women who ask me for advice. And I'm obviously very generous with my time when it comes to that, because I think I was really fortunate to kind of be a bit blasé about the whole situation, about, going to a country in COVID, with COVID, and then going to a war zone and going to a sanctioned country and then going to a regime sanctioned country. So I think I always didn't have any problems with it, but I think equally it could have also been very, very badly. It could have all gone very badly had I not had a little bit of luck on my side, and just the pure the pure fact that people were just so surprised that I was like, this Australian woman in mountain gear would just turn up and be like, oh, hi, I'm here to climb a mountain. And people were just so absolutely shocked at it that they were doing everything they could to help me succeed and to help me along the way. But I think if you have a little bit of a different fate or different luck, it really could have gone poorly. Like I could have been cannibalized in Papa New Guinea very easily. or assaulted or eaten or disappeared or taken for ransom. Like, all of those things are plausible situations considering what happens in that country, and what I was told when I was there. Equally, I could have been, taken to a little room inside of like an airport in Russia and said, "Oh, you're a spy, and you're not continuing on this journey. We're going to put you in prison for 10 years." And equally, I could have had the same thing happen in Iran. Like, "Oh, your hair is out here, like here into a room. Oh, you have a photo," or something like that. So I think things could have really turned out very differently in all these different occasions. So despite the fact that I had so much luck, I would probably recommend that people tread with more caution when going into some of these countries. Yeah.
Because it's also a very male-dominated sport in general. Do you know? Like, there's even on the mountains, you've got, even if your guides and the people you're paying to do a good job are doing their service to the best of their ability, you're still surrounded by other men on the mountains in isolated areas, do you know?
Yeah, really isolated areas. Like, and predominantly, yeah, you're right.
And men from all over the world who have different cultures, yeah. So,
yeah, look, what maybe a piece of advice that I can give people is, like, kind of similar to what we did with Elbrus, is see if you can get a team of people to come with you. Like, either go with a team or go with friends or go with people. I don't always think it's safe to go two women because you're just compounding the problem. But sometimes to go with lots of different people. Like when Destiny and I went to Mexico, obviously Mexico is relatively safe. We went with a team. There was a lot of other people around us. So different situation. But in some of these more remote areas, I would definitely advise that you go with people.
Okay.
And people that you know and trust.
Yeah, at least. Just go with people. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to add on that?
Anything else that you want to ask me? This is...
no, I think we're good for now. We can catch up again this time next year whenever you've done your next couple of
when I do my next stupid thing.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, as long as you don't get eaten or arrested.
Or cannibalized.
Yeah, kidnapped. Okay, so where can people follow you on Instagram and YouTube that you mentioned and all that?
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel that I post all these videos. It's just Caroline Leon. And then obviously on Instagram, it's caroline.d.leon.
Cool. Okay. And if you want to go hiking with your company?
Yeah, go to Summit Expeditions.
Yeah. And you can sign up to whatever mountains you want. They're all there on the website. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. And Merry Christmas, Caroline. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you too.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.